Welcome back to another episode of the Scoreboard. We're about to enter week 17 in the NFL, so we are on the final stretch. 2 more games to decide all the playoff seedings. Smokey, how are you doing?
Oh, I am doing good. I am better than Chiefs fans right now because although they're still number one in that division, it may not be for long. And it looks like there is something very wrong with the Chiefs right now. It reminds me of that Steelers run from, I think it was 2 seasons ago, where it was when Big Ben was still there. And they won like 14 games straight or whatever to start the season. And then it all went south and it was looking really bad. And then they got knocked out the first round of the playoffs. That's almost what it feels like for the Chiefs right now. It feels like they're going to make the playoffs. Well, I mean, that's not even, I don't even think that's a definite at this point in time. But they may get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs if they're playing like this. And it feels really weird because they've been so dominant over the past few years. But I think they're headed in a downward spiral at this time. Maybe they could pull it out. Who knows? But how are you, Alex?
I'm good too. I'm better than. I'm never prepared enough for this to really say who to pick. Let's just say I'm better than Broncos fans. I think again, I'll go with them because playoff hopes are slowly evaporating, and now Russell Wilson is getting benched, even though they need to win both games to make the playoffs. They're benching him literally to save money, which goes to show you all you probably need to know.
Yeah.
Going into what their priority is going into next season on the quarterback position. I also want to say upfront apologies if my audio is worse than usual. I'm not at my usual setup with the microphone, so because I'm on vacation. Hopefully it's still audible at the final video. We'll try our best. But let's talk about this week here. But first, we have to talk about this MVP power rankings. We have 2 weeks to go for the regular season, which the MVP is supposed to be a pure regular season award. What does your list look like at the moment?
Well, unfortunately, Purdy has been knocked down. You can't really throw 4 interceptions and stay at the front of the running for the MVP. And really, the only guy that stands out right now is Lamar Jackson. But there are a couple names left that can still take this if Lamar Jackson has one of those Brock Purdy type games. And it actually happens to be Christian McCaffrey. And he may actually take that award from Brock Purdy because a lot of people are going to look at it as Christian McCaffrey may have been the reason they were winning this whole time. And he still had a decent game against the Ravens. So it's him. And Tua still has a shot at pulling this off if both of those names somehow take a nosedive here in the last 2 games of the season. And I know it's supposed to be a regular season award, but the playoffs always manage to find their way into the rankings at the end of the season. So regardless of what it's supposed to be, people still look at the playoff records and their performances in the playoffs. So I don't think anything's decided just yet, but right now Lamar Jackson has to be the voting favorite. What do you think?
I'm gonna abstain from giving a clear answer this week because I know it'll probably be biased. But I just want to hint at the fact that Brock Purdy still will finish, barring a major catastrophe, with a significantly better statistical season than Lamar Jackson in almost every aspect. At the same time, I've never been a believer in this McCaffrey, as great as he is, as important as he is. The MVP is a quarterback award unless something extraordinary happens. And he's having an extraordinary season, but I still don't think it'll be enough because his quarterback is so high up in the rankings as well. But if you remember Adrian Peterson, the last running back to win MVP, that was the entire offense. He was that team. Now, Christian McCaffrey is a huge part of that team. But if, as a non-quarterback, you're only one of the big parts of the team, I don't think it'll be enough. He's the offensive player of the years, having the best running back season in many years I can remember, probably since Chris Johnson's 2,000 yard season. But I still don't understand why Tua's fallen so low. To be fair, I know that Lamar Jackson's going to be the popular pick now that he's won, but statistically speaking, to me, it's not clear. I think we'll probably get a pretty good idea after next week because Lamar's playing Tua, so that's another like a battle of the big dogs there. But we'll be able to give final predictions I guess, after week 18. But I want to see for Purdy as well, though. Of course, if you look at the stats, it looks so much worse than it was. 3 of the interceptions weren't his fault, or barely his fault at all. And also play calling was probably the worst they've done all year. And I've seen some conspiracies about, Kyle Shanahan intentionally calling like up vanilla offense because he expects to see the Ravens again in the Super Bowl, which just makes no sense whatsoever to me. But or at least I'm not really buying it. But I guess we'll see over the next few weeks. Now, we have one game that we play every week before we get into these predictions, which is called Guess the Biggest Spread. And in that, I ask you, Smokey, can you guess the biggest spread of Week 17?
Ooh, you know what? I actually completely forgot about the game this week, so I hadn't determined who I think it may be, but I'm going to look through it really quick right here. I think the Bills and the Patriots stand out. Wow. That may actually be it. The Eagles and the Cardinals stand out. And wow. So, yeah, I'm guessing it's one of those two. It's either the Bills over the Patriots or the Eagles over the Cardinals. And I will go with the Eagles right now.
It is neither of the two.
Really?
By a very close margin, the Niners are a bigger favorite over Washington with 13 points.
Okay.
Bills have 2 points, 12 points, at home. But adjusted for home and road, this is a significant difference, by the way, because that's in Washington. Mm-hmm. And the other games, the other two are at home. But those are currently the biggest favorites. We'll go into all these games. First, I need to be updated on how last week looked, because we are, as every year, in a very tight race for the prediction game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you made a little bit of headroom again on me. Wasn't a great week for both of us overall, but I ended up with 8, and you ended up with 10, I believe. No, you ended up with 9, because we disagreed on 3 of them. I got 1 of them, and you got 2 of them. We disagreed on the Commanders and the Jets. Another game that I went out on a limb and picked the Commanders, and they should have won that game. They had that game won all the way up to the last second. And
they also had it lost after the first quarter. They could have just resigned after the first quarter.
Yeah.
The game was over.
No, true. The Seahawks and the Titans. I picked the Titans, and I feel like the Titans still could have pulled that out. And the Jaguars and the Bucks. I picked the Bucks, and luckily that one came through for me. And the Bucks are kind of on a hot streak right now, so that's why I picked them, and I know that the Jaguars have been down a little bit. But either way, 8-9 for this week, bringing the total 141 for me and 144 for you.
Okay, 3 points into the last 2 weeks, so that's a lead to defend for me. See if I can do it for once. Yeah, the Bucks are looking good, which is probably not great news for your Falcons. Huh?
Not at all. No,
but
not at all.
They did their part. They beat the Colts, and anything's still possible. We'll see how it goes this week. Starting off Thursday night, we have another instant classic here. The one of Joe Flacco's former teams, the New York Jets, at the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Oh, this is a revenge game. I didn't even think about that. Now, the Browns are on a hot streak also with Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco is playing amazing considering the situation that he just came off of the street not too long ago, and here he is winning games once again in the NFL. Nobody would have predicted that. Nobody had money on Joe Flacco actually leading a team into the playoffs at this point in time, but here it is. The Jets, yes, they pulled off the win. Or a close win over the Commanders, which the Commanders should have won that, like I said. But they got the win. I don't know that this gives them any momentum. Still Trevor Siemian or Zach Wilson or whoever they're going to throw out there. The Jets are still not great, and this is in Cleveland, so I will easily be taking the Browns at home.
Yeah, give me the Browns as well. Jets they looked like they were going to blow out the Commanders, then almost lost the game. Mm-hmm. So you can't really trust them. Their quarterback carousel. Joe Flacco's having somehow an incredible year as a back. I wonder if he's going to be a starter next year. Like the Deshaun Watson can't stay healthy, and like DTR, I don't know if he's going to be any good. We'll see. Like maybe he'll get another shot. It'd be interesting to see for sure. If they gave him a whole year he played like this, the Browns are contending for the division. So see how that works. But they're winning this one, and they are making the playoffs with Joe Flacco. Shocker, but they're going to win it. Big matchup here in the NFC. The Lions at the Cowboys.
Yeah, and a very tough one to pick because we know the Cowboys are a good team. They're not a great team, obviously. They can't win on the road, but they are at home for this one, so it makes it really hard because the Lions just picked up their 11th win, and this is the best season probably in the past 30 years for the Lions. They're actually a legitimate playoff team. They're not just backdooring their way in at the last second like the last time, which was probably still 7-8 years ago when they made the playoffs. But here we are. They're a good team. They're really good. And they're scary, but this is at home for the Cowboys, which the Cowboys have been excellent at home. As much as a lot of people don't like to see it, they are. But then again, is this a downward spiral that they're going into because they're coming off of a few losses? I don't know that the Cowboys are as legit as everybody wanted them to be, but being at home makes it tough. I think I'm just going to stick with the momentum here, though, and say that the Lions are having some kind of crazy miracle season, and I will take the Lions to win this one in Dallas.
So this one is a difficult one. The Cowboys have struggled. This is super important because we currently have a sort of a three-way tie for the 1 seed, at least record-wise in the NFC. The Niners currently have the tiebreaker over the Eagles and Lions, but the Cowboys are also in the mix. They're a game behind, and if they want to have any hope for that seed or the winning the division, they have to win this game. They've struggled, so I will also take the Lions to get it done. Now, the more I'm watching the Eagles and Cowboys these last few weeks, I'm starting to think that the Lions might be the biggest threat for the Niners in the entirety of the conference. Either them or, believe it or not, possibly the Rams.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
The way they've been coming up.
Yeah.
So those are actually the two teams I kind of don't want to see. Especially the Lions, because we've beaten all the other teams soundly. So I wouldn't actually mind if the Lions made the 2 seed, because that means they'd only possibly play in the conference championship. But I'm taking the Lions anyway. They're a better team than the Cowboys. Another big hitter here. We have the Dolphins at the Ravens.
Yeah, this might be game of the week here. It's really tough because I want to believe in the Dolphins, and I really like the team, and I love Tua. I think this team is so special, but they have struggled against really good teams. They finally put one over on the Cowboys, ending the battle of who is the worst against good teams. Is it the Dolphins or the Cowboys? Well, we see the Dolphins were able to pull off that win, which gives them a little momentum, but the Ravens just beat possibly the number 1 team, making them the number 1 team in the NFL. By proxy, they are number 1 in the power rankings this week. I checked. The Ravens do look scary, and that defense is really good. And it's amazing that they're getting it done on offense so well, considering the pieces that are missing there. But they look really good. Man, I want the Dolphins to win, but you can't go against the momentum that the Ravens have right now. So I have to pick the Ravens at home.
Man, I would love to see Tua win this one and make it sort of put himself in the MVP conversation. Also, because I'm of course more rooting for the Dolphins because I love them, like them on Hard Knocks, to win the AFC. This is a possible AFC championship game, especially with the way the Chiefs are looking, and I hope that we're going to see this one again. And if we do, this game will decide where that AFC championship will be played. Because the Ravens win, they're going to be through. They're going to clinch that 1 seed, and they're going to go through. The Dolphins win, and they'll make it an open fight. But I have to go Baltimore as well. There is some, like Lamar Jackson being held out of practice, but I think that's more of a prophylactic measure than any serious issue. I, for this entire season, underestimated how good the Ravens are in the trenches, because I like to think of the Niners as having pretty good line play, right? But they are both offensive and defensive line for the Niners looked like high school kids. That entire game, the Ravens are on a different level on both sides of the line, and if Lamar Jackson can get it together in the red zone, I think they are probably the best team in the league. And I think because especially they match up against the Niners so well, who might be an overall more talented roster because of those weaknesses, I think the Ravens should be the favorites to win the Super Bowl today. And I also have them beating Miami, though I'll be rooting for the Dolphins. Patriots at the Bills.
Yeah, the Patriots have pulled off some surprising wins this season to be as bad as they are, because they have gotten absolutely blown out by a ton of teams this year, and they've put up 0-point stinkers left and right. But then again, every now and then they just jump up and surprise you by beating someone. And I'm kind of hoping for the Bills' sake that that's not the case, because I also really like the Bills and I want to see them succeed also. I want to see these guys all playing in the playoffs. So therefore, I think the Bills, looking as good as they are right now, they were bad in the beginning of the season, but now they look absolutely legit. They look like the Bills again, so I will be taking the Bills at home.
Give me the Bills as well. Yeah, Patriots are just running out the season, and we'll see what happens. They've been kind of playing better than expected, but Buffalo's in the hunt now for the playoffs. They've turned it around big time after at some point their playoff chances were less than 30%, and they've made it back into the thick of things, and it looks like they could be the third best team in the AFC right now. And in fact, they get to play Miami next week to make a stamp and make an argument to be the second best or best team in the AFC late in the season. So give me the Bills, despite the injuries they've suffered on defense with Matt Milano and Trey White, two of their like superstars, Pro Bowlers. Bills looking good, so I will take them to win. Falcons and the Bears.
Man, this is tough. This is tough because I know the Bears can win games. You can say what you will about the Cardinals, the win over the Cardinals, but the Bears are, like I said last week, they're surprisingly good to be as bad as they are. I don't know, man. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think they can beat the Falcons here, especially in Chicago. Do I want the Falcons to win? I don't know. I really don't know. I was going to say yes, but thinking about it, I don't know, because Arthur Smith needs to be fired. He needs to have been fired already in the middle of the season. Maybe we would have a few more wins. He's ruined a quarterback's career, in my opinion, and I hope he gets a shot somewhere else. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Taylor Heineke pulls off a win, which is probably another nail in the coffin of Desmond Ridder. Although if I had a franchise, I owned a franchise, I would absolutely 10 times out of 10 take Desmond Ridder over Taylor Heineke. Arthur Smith don't think that way because he's got this goofy, bland, lame offense that he wants to run, and he thinks Taylor Heineke can do it a little bit better than Desmond because he's already ruined the boy's career, his confidence. He's ruined everything. Let's get Arthur Smith out of Atlanta, please. But as for right now, it's tough. I want the Falcons to win, I guess. I feel like if I pick them, they're going to lose. They're just going to break me. They're going to break my heart all over again. But they have momentum, maybe. I don't know. They have to win this. They absolutely have to win it if they want a shot at the playoffs. I'm going to take the Falcons so I can just watch them lose and be disappointed again.
Oh, wow. Listen, I'm going to start to believe in this stuff if you keep saying it. It's like you're cursing the Falcons. In fact, I'm going to put it to the test this week. I'm taking Chicago. I'm going with the Bears. I'm riding that wave up. If you pick the Falcons, they lose. If you pick against them, they win. It's happened a suspicious amount of times as of now in recent years and weeks. So I'm going to put that to the test. Give me the Bears, a team I would never pick, but this week I'm doing it just to test this hypothesis. Titans at the Texans.
Yeah, that might be the first time you've picked the Bears this season, and now that you mention it, I don't think I've gotten a Falcons game right all season. Every time I pick against them, they win. Every time I pick them, they lose. Titans and the Texans, yeah, divisional showdown. Is CJ going to be back, or are we going to see Davis Mills? Are we going to see whoever else we want to throw out there? You know, we saw Davis Mills a little bit last week. Didn't play out so well, though, really. Titans are coming off of another heartbreaking loss. It does make this game tough. If CJ's out there, I'm absolutely going Texans all the way. They should easily win this game. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. But it is in Houston, so I'll give the 3-point advantage to the home team and take the Texans.
Yeah, also give me the Texans. I don't know who's playing quarterback, but they've looked competent in the last week at least. Even without CJ Stroud. I think if he's able to, they're probably going to bring him back because they still have that shot at the playoffs. Either way, they should be winning this, Houston, to make it. The Raiders at the Colts.
Yeah, Raiders are on a hot streak, believe it or not. With Aiden O'Connell, these guys are pulling off wins left and right. They just beat the Chiefs, which maybe that's not as big of a feat as it used to be, but it's still something to hang your hat on for the Raiders. They're only 7-8 right now. I don't know if they're eliminated from the playoffs. Actually, I don't think so. I think if they win the next 2 games and the Chiefs lose out, then they're winning that division because they have the win over the Chiefs. Man, the Colts are coming off that loss to the Falcons. I know they need this for that division, but I'm going to stick with the hot hand and say that the Raiders take this one in Indy.
Wow. See, they just beat the Chiefs, which was awful impressive, and their defense looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard to say. They seem to be energized now that Josh McDaniels is gone and the new coaching regime's taken over. They look better. They look more motivated. But the Colts have something to play for here. They have a playoff berth that is very tangible to play for in the AFC. I'm going to go Indianapolis to bounce back. I know they just lost to Atlanta, but they put up a fight at least. I think they'll get it done. Indianapolis wins. I don't believe the Raiders are the kind of team that wins back-to-back games in that impressive of a fashion. It maybe takes another year or two until they're at that point. Panthers at Jacksonville.
Yeah, we need Lawrence out there. Because CJ Beathard is not going to win this game at all. The Panthers are a horrible team. I don't know if they're the worst in the league anymore because they have been showing some promise over the past couple of weeks, but they're still low enough that they should be easily handled by the Jaguars if Lawrence is out there. But it may be CJ Beathard. So far, Lawrence hasn't missed a game, but when Beathard is in there, it hasn't gone well, and they're coming off of a loss. But I have to go with it. I think the Jaguars are an overall better team, and they're playing at home. I'll take the Jaguars.
Yeah, give me Jacksonville. Haven't looked good, but it's another case of even if Trevor Lawrence can't play, and they're probably trying to get him to, even though he has his third injured body part now and hasn't rehabbed a single one, it's the Carolina Panthers. Well, Bryce Young played well, very well, had a very good game last week, but Jacksonville gets it done. Locks up the division, and they have to. They're feeling the pressure because Houston, the Colts are everyone. They're right there. And the Jaguars have been struggling, so they have to win this one. Rams at the Giants.
See, I was going to surprise you earlier, or at this point, but you mentioned it earlier, that the Rams are maybe the team that no one wants to play in the playoffs because they are looking phenomenal right now. They're looking like when they made the Super Bowl run a couple years ago and actually won the Super Bowl. They seem to be all healthy. I know they've been beat up all year long, but they seem to be getting it back together and peaking at the right time, whereas the Giants are going to bring in Tyrod Taylor to start. I guess that's probably the end of the run for Tommy DeVito here. I don't think Tyrod gives them any better chance to win whatsoever, even though it's in New York. I'm going to stick with the hot hand here also and say that the Rams get it done.
I have to agree. Unfortunately, I'll be rooting very hard for the Giants in this one. Tyrod Taylor getting the start. Maybe he can do something different. New quarterback to prepare for, but the Rams are looking too good. So Rams get it done, and I suspect they'll sneak into the playoffs. I hope not, but it looks like they will. Cardinals at the Eagles.
Yeah, the other team that's in the battle for worst team in the league with the Panthers. And the Panthers might actually be better than the Cardinals now. I know they've put up a little bit of offense, but then looking back at those couple of games, it may be that those defenses that they went up against are not quite as good as we thought they were. But either way, the Eagles, although they are kind of frauds in a way because they're not as good as their record, they should easily handle the Cards here at home. I'll take the Eagles.
I agree. Taking the Eagles, they had a big relief win in which they let the Giants come dangerously close at the end, but ultimately they got it done, and they absolutely needed to. And that has to continue here. Arizona could be another trap game, and given how they've played, who knows? But yeah, I'll have to take the Eagles just based on their record and the talent on the roster. Saints and the Bucks.
The Bucks are on a tear, and it sucks because, I want both of these teams to lose somehow, if that's possible. A tie would be perfectly fine. If you guys tie at 3-3 or something like that, that'll be perfectly fine. We can handle that as long as the Falcons win, which they probably won't because I picked them, but here you got to stick with the hot hand also. I'm using that phrase way too much at this point, but I will stick with the Bucks and say that they get it done at home over the Saints.
Yeah, give me the Bucks to win as well. you should be rooting for the Saints, right? If anything, because they're a game behind Tampa Bay, like the Falcons. I think if the Bucs win, they might just clinch the division. They might just end up being too far.
Yeah, I think so.
Too far ahead.
I think they do.
So you have to root for either a tie or Saints win. But I'll take the Bucs. Baker's been looking really good. I saw someone post a statistic today that showed that Baker Mayfield is having a better statistical season than Lamar Jackson in every conceivable metric other than rushing yards, and no one's giving him credit. But fair enough, the team's not winning it. Or it hasn't been winning as much as the Ravens have, and I can see why. But it's the interesting stats. Best season of his career, probably by far for Baker Mayfield. So he probably has a chance of being the starter again next year for the Bucs. And yeah, they're bouncing back pretty good, and they have a chance to win the division this week in a huge one. This is going to be the game of the time slot, maybe. With the Saints, it's always an interesting one. There's going to be fights. Mike Evans is going to get ejected, as he always does. But it'll be a great game. Niners at the Commies.
Yeah, probably Michael Thomas, too. He might get ejected somehow. The Niners at the Commies. Jacoby Brissett will be starting this game. I think that may be the end of the starting job for Sam Howell, unless he lucks his way into an unfortunate situation next season. They're probably going to ride Jacoby Brissett on out for the rest of the season and see how high of a draft pick they get. 49ers needed this because the gauntlet came to an end finally for them. And they need a couple cupcake games. Like last time their lull happened, they had a bye week to get them through and get them back on course. They don't have that fortune at this point in time. But luckily you got a cupcake game coming up. And I'll be taking the 49ers on the road.
Luckily we do have that coming up. I'll take them as well. Niners get those demons out. I think it's luckily we picked up their best pass rusher earlier in the season, so it shouldn't be an issue for our lines anymore. But Purdy's going to have a good bounce back game and get everything back into the groove. I think there was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of timing issues, a lot of sort of weird miscommunication between coaching and the players on the field, and just a lot of confusion, bad preparation. Everything came together, and then bad luck, of course. All the bounces went against them as well last week. So everything came together there, and then they'll bounce back against an inferior opponent and beat the Commies at home. Steelers at the Seahawks.
Listen, I thought the storyline was way too ridiculous to actually work out, but Rudolph saved Christmas once again.
He did it.
Yeah, against the Bengals also, who were on a hot streak, and I know we were in fear that Tomlin was finally going to have a losing season, but he may not now. Who knows? But the Seahawks are also on kind of a win streak here, and I've been picking against them, and they've been winning because, like I said, they always find a way to win in the end. It's Tomlin. Pete Carroll and Coach Tomlin are kind of on the same level. Like, no matter how bad their team is, they always find a way to end above 500. And I think this is the battle of who's going to finish above 500 right here. Do I want the Steelers or do I want the Seahawks? I don't think Rudolph can keep up this miracle that he's got going on. It's going to crumble at some point. We saw it to all the backups this year. At some point, it's going to come down. Is it in game 2? Maybe so, because I'll be taking the Seahawks at home.
Man, give me. I want the Steelers. I want the Steelers in this one. I'm picking this with my heart over my brain a little bit, but I feel like these teams are also very evenly matched. Both are on the verge of making the playoffs. They have the same record. Steelers look great last week. Mason Rudolph once again saved Christmas, like you said. I'm taking the Steelers. I need them to win this one for once. And they are, if they do, by the way, they clinch yet another winning season when we thought it wasn't possible. But the only way for them to have a losing season is lose back-to-back games. I hope they don't. I hope Mike Tomlin stays flawless. Taking the Steelers. Chargers at the Broncos.
This might be Tank Bowl at this point. Man, Russell Wilson does not deserve what Sean Payton is doing to him. I still think Russell has a lot to give to a team, but unfortunately, Sean Payton just doesn't deserve that. Man, this is coaching issues. And Sean Payton might be the most horrible coach, even regardless of his record in the past. I think he's one of the most horrible coaches in the league. Man, so originally, before that news came out, I circled the Broncos when I was writing these down last night. But who's the backup? Is it Jarrett Stidham? Is that who's going to start?
I believe so, yeah.
Uh, Man, I don't know if I want the Broncos anymore. I think the Chargers might be able to pull this off. I'm not, not that Easton Stick is going to come out and impress the world or anything. But, maybe it's a two-game bump situation. I guess I'll stick with the home team here and say the Broncos get it done. But this may be a Chargers game. Who knows?
It might be. I mean, I wouldn't mind to see the Chargers pull this one off somehow. But I'm probably going to have to go with... We're going to have to go with the Broncos here. As far as I hear or understand, the reason that the Broncos are doing this with Russell Wilson is because he has this clause in his contract, the injury clause, that if he suffers a catastrophic injury or something, he's owed like $35 million. And because they're probably planning to move on from him, they're just trying to not have that financial hit on them going into next year. So I'm fairly certain that he's played his last snap as a Bronco, unless Sean Payton somehow gets fired. He's going to be out after the season. That's what they're saying. That's what all of this is pointing to when we get another rebuild with a hand-picked quarterback, probably in the draft by Sean Payton. Let's see how that turns out. But yeah, Russell Wilson's not starting. Still taking the Broncos because the Chargers don't have their quarterback. And even though they looked decent last week, don't trust them. So give me the Broncos. Bengals at the Chiefs.
Crystal ball prediction: Russell Wilson will be starting for the Atlanta Falcons next season.
Oh, wow. You sure you want that? Or is that like a doomsaying thing?
Well, yeah, it's not really what I want. But I believe Russell Wilson still has something to give. It's not the Marcus Mariota situation. I think Russell Wilson has a lot more to give to a team than Marcus Mariota had when he came to Atlanta. But that just feels like what we're headed for at this point in time. Maybe I would rather... start out fresh with a new quarterback, fresh out of the draft, but feels like we might get him at this point in time. Bengals and the Chiefs. Oh, man, are both of these teams on a downward slide right now. Who would have thought the Chiefs could actually be this bad with the best quarterback in the entire league at the helm? With Travis Kelce going downhill, I think he's probably done after the next few games. However far they make it into the playoffs, I think Travis Kelce is done with his career after this season. And he's not playing well, and I think that's one of the biggest problems, is because there's not enough options out there to help Patrick Mahomes along. They don't have a superstar running back. They don't have a superstar wide receiver. Their superstar tight end is going downhill rapidly. But the Bengals are not in much of a better situation. It's kind of the opposite. They don't have the quarterback, but they do have brilliant receiving options. But either way, I gotta say that the Chiefs get back on track here. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but it feels like what should happen. I'll be taking the Chiefs at home.
Huh. I would take the Bengals here in a heartbeat if Jake Browning hadn't laid that egg.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it difficult. But the Chiefs are looking very dysfunctional right now. It's a very difficult one to pick here. I think the Chiefs are going to feel the heat enough to where they will find a way to win this, but do not be surprised if this goes the other way. I think the Bengals are perfectly capable of pulling this one off. Chiefs are 7-point favorites, and I'm not touching that line by any means. Mm-mm. I will take them to win because it's high time, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. And then Monday night we have the NFC North Classic, Packers at the Vikings.
Man, I was hearing that they were thinking about going back to Josh Dobbs over Mullins this week, which would be an interesting move, but I think both of them, speaking of laying eggs, both of them have laid eggs very recently. You know what? Nick Mullins has like 700 and something passing yards in the past 2 games, and it's kind of crazy considering the way the team has performed. You wouldn't think so, but oh man, Justin Jefferson proved he might absolutely be the best wide receiver in the entire league at the end of that game. That was phenomenal. However, it just wasn't enough to get it done. Packers also pulled it off in a close one. makes this one tough. I think the Packers still have wild card aspirations, and that's going to dim really quickly if they can't pull it off over the Vikings. So I guess I'm going to pick the Packers on the road.
Yeah, this one's tough. See, Nick Mullins is like, it kind of seems like the second coming of Brett Favre in a way, because because he went to the same college, but also he'll just throw it downfield every chance he gets, and someone's going to catch it, and half the time it's his guy, and half the time it's the defense, and it's a very it's definitely a very difficult or risky way to live by as an NFL team, especially in like how developed the passing game is today. So he's kind of attacking like a sophisticated lock with a crowbar, right? And sometimes it works out well. And the Packers are the kind of team that will certainly allow it. And here's the other thing. The Packers are voluntarily suspending their best player for this game. Have you heard about this story?
No, who's out?
The Packers are suspending Jair Alexander, their best player on the roster, for a game because he went up to the coin toss in the last game.
Yes, he didn't.
And
defer.
And he said the wrong thing. He said they want to play on defense instead of they want to defer or they want to kick. And if that had counted, that means they would have had to kick off in both halves. So they're suspending him for a game, which is absurd. Ridiculous. It's crazy. Or, like, if you're thinking you can make the playoffs, you suspend your best player for no reason whatsoever. But it's a disciplinary action. Sure, he might be out of there by the end of the year because the Packers don't look like they're going anywhere, and he should be going to a better team to try to make the playoffs. But with that being said, I'm going to take the Vikings. My moral favorite, I'm taking the Vikings in this one. I want Nick Mullins to have a positive Brett Favre kind of day and beat the Packers here, because they're both 7-8 right now, and this is for the chance at a wild card in that division, with the Lions have already clinched. I'm taking the Vikings. Nick Mullins gets it done over the Packers. How many disagreements do we have this week?
We have 4, so I do have the chance to make it up, and I possibly pass you this week, or you could make it out of reach for me if you take all of these. But I have a feeling you might win 1 and I get 3, and then we're tied again going into the last game.
Okay, it could be. Yeah, if that happens, I mean, that's the perfect way that it usually goes, right? We're tied or very close to tied going into last week, and then somehow we end up being exactly tied after after everything's done. So that's a very good possibility again as well. So we'll see how it turns out. And after this week, we're going to know a lot about how the playoffs are looking. Given there's only two weeks left, a lot of things are still open. We only have 2 teams, believe it or not, in the entire AFC that have clinched the playoffs. So there's a lot of shaking up going on. Or potentially a lot of shaking up. A lot of the divisions are wide open. We have a little bit more in the NFC, but even there, at least 3 playoff spots are still for the taking. So it's going to be a huge week, super important week, and we are also going to start seeing the important bowl games in college football. We're getting into the big guns. So do you have any takes on, like, I assume you'd stick with Georgia to take it to Florida State? Yeah.
Have you seen how many opt-outs are lining up to get away from Florida State? Florida State is in shambles right now. They're trying to get out of the ACC. All of their players are opting out. A lot of them have already declared for the draft. They're going to be playing with third stringers. Even the backup quarterback has opted out. They're starting, like, I don't know if the guy is a freshman or what, but their starting quarterback has absolutely no experience. And luckily, Georgia has very, very few opt-outs. Even the guys that are declaring for the draft are still playing. So I have a feeling this is going to be a giant blowout. And I kind of feel bad for Florida State fans because of how they were done in the end of the season. But, yeah, unfortunately, there's going to be a huge blowout. And the question is, are we going to get any blowouts in the college football playoff this year? Because every season, there's some giant blowout that happens somewhere in the playoffs, and sometimes more than one. But who's it going to be this year? Who do you think is going to get blown out?
Like in the playoffs?
Yes.
In the playoff?
Yes. in the Final Four.
Man, if anyone's getting blown out, it's going to be Washington. But I don't think anyone's getting blown out. That's what I'm thinking. I think we have 2 close games. I think we're only having close games this year. Yeah, there's not a terrible team. Like Washington beat Oregon twice for a reason, and we can still say that Oregon's probably looked better through most of the season as a team, but they didn't win the game. So I think Washington ultimately, given the results, deserves where they're at. Texas should win. I think they're better, but I don't think there's any blowouts. So.
Really?
Do you think there will be?
Well, I'm not definite on which one it would be, but it happens every year. I'm trying to think back when there was a year that there wasn't some kind of blowout, and it's been quite some time. Yeah, I mean, you think about Notre Dame getting blown out. You think about Cincinnati, well, kind of getting blown out. I guess it wasn't a super bad one. You think about Michigan getting blown out by Georgia, and TCU in the finals getting blown out. I don't know. I think it's going to fall somewhere. One of these teams is going to get blown out, and then everybody's going to complain that they got it wrong, you know. But luckily, next year we won't have that problem anymore, so everyone can complain all they want. It's not going to matter anymore. But yeah, I think it'll happen somewhere, and it may actually be Michigan. You know, it may be that their issues with the cheating scandal and whatever's going on, that they may be the ones to get blown out this year.
Could be. It could be. I don't think so.
My biggest candidates is Michigan and Washington, because I think Texas is much better than what anybody would expect, and Washington hasn't faced any legitimate teams, meaning to say, you know, an SEC team or something like that. So, yeah, it might be Washington.
Okay. Oh, well, we'll see. We have our bet going. We bet on Alabama, and we split the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how it goes. I personally think they're gonna lose to Michigan if they lose. I don't think they'll lose to anyone in the Natty, but we'll see. I hope they obviously beat Michigan, but
Michigan has not performed well in the playoffs. They made the playoffs the past 2 seasons. Like I said, they got blown out by like 30 points, something, whatever the score was, 2 seasons ago. Then last year they lost to TCU, and as we discovered in the very next game, TCU was not any good at all. So I don't know. I mean, you think that the Big Ten is tough competition, right? And Ohio State, which is usually a really good team, and they've got all these wins over Ohio State, and then they go to the playoffs and lose in the first round to teams that are not good, or when they run across a team that is good, you know, they get blown out. Maybe the reason they've dominated the Big Ten the past few seasons is because of that cheating scandal. I think this is a conspiracy right here.
All right. No. They'll be just fine. And Jim Harbaugh's probably gonna sign a big extension, and they'll be just fine.
I don't know if
I don't think we'll have blowouts.
He might not be able to. There might be some kind of sanctions on him coming up. He might end up back in the NFL or something.
Oh man, like I don't know why the NCAA is trying to like get rid of some of their biggest draws. Maybe he finds like an attractive offer from the NFL, like the Chargers would be looking pretty good. Probably my first choice.
Yeah,
because all they need is a complete like leadership overhaul.
Or the Raiders.
Yeah, Raiders. But the Chargers have a big advantage in that race, which is they have Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they got an elite quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a team that has one of his guys that maybe he would want to go to? I don't guess so. Definitely not quarterbacks, because Michigan quarterbacks do not make it in the NFL. Except for Tom Brady, of course.
He could go to a team like the Raiders and then draft J.J. McCarthy.
True.
And just if he believes that he's really the guy for the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a good chance, though, he ends up in the NFL next season.
Oh yeah, he's going to. I'm pretty sure he will. For sure. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. We'll see how things go. For now, do you have anything to add for this week in the NFL?
No, I think that's it for this week.
All right. I want to thank everyone for watching. Remember, as every week, you can vote for your favorite to win all these awards, but specifically the MVP. on our channel page if you want to click there. Let us know what you think about these games. Do you have any big upsets that you want to pick, or are you just going status quo? And how's the playoff picture going to look? Because we're getting into the important phase this week. We're going to learn a lot about how these playoffs are going to be turning out. So let us know what you think about all these games, and we're going to see you in the next one.
Deuces.